Hello and welcome to England Cricket on 99.94 Cricket every day. I am Daniel Norcross, the man who has been in Australia for the last 42 days watching almost everybody except England, except at the last bit when I did get to watch England, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I have with me the puff pastry hangman himself. He has been watching from afar. He is the chief cricket writer for the Press Association. He is none other than the Iftikhar Ahmed of 99.94.
God,
Rory
no idea what that means. I have absolutely no idea what that means. But I'm going to take it as a compliment.
You're about 30. You're about 35, but you look about 47.
Oh God!
Oh, in the nicest possible way. I mean,
I don't even know how old you are, Dad. You're some kind of time lord. I'm not sure what century you're from.
67 to 90. I'm somewhere around that neck of the woods. England Cricket on 99.94 is your new home for England cricket content, and we will be dropping into your podcast feed on YouTube or on the 99.94 app several times every week. So please do rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you for joining Cricket's Conversation. Do we have three topics to talk about today? I don't think we do. I think what we've got to talk about is that England somehow, at the start of the year, saw Ollie Robinson, start of 2022, saw Ollie Robinson making his way very rapidly to Hobart International Airport, even before the last ball had been bowled of the Ashes series, as England made their tawdry and miserable way out of an Ashes series. And 10 months later, they have destroyed New Zealand at Test cricket. They have beaten India in an extraordinary fashion in Test cricket. They have repulsed South Africa in Test cricket. And most importantly, they have become the only side ever to hold the 50-over and 20-over World Cup titles simultaneously. Rory, we are here to unpick that remarkable story, a renaissance extraordinaire. What the hell have we just witnessed?
In the midst of all that, they did something completely unlikely as well. They actually went to Pakistan, which was nice of them after not doing so last year. So it has been a bit of a year of putting things right. Yeah, listen, I think you're on your 42nd day in Australia, but at least you get to go on a high and with a bit of wind in your sails. When I was in Australia for that Ashes series, it was a long old schlep, and it got worse and worse and worse the longer we stayed. We left Hobart in very low spirits, it has to be said. So this England team has put smiles on everyone's faces. I think it was a really decent victory against a team who turned up in the end. It didn't look like they were going to, and at halfway I thought this might be the final that falls a bit flat. I mean, there is such a thing as winning a world title in a bit of a flat way. It was on free to air. There was, the idea of getting a few eyeballs on it, but it turned into a proper final, and it needed a proper victory, and England gave them one, and Ben Stokes gave them one. And in terms of crossover and getting a bit of interest from those wider public, that fellow Ben Stokes being in the thick of it always helps. So this is an England team, as you say, they're 50-over champions, 20-over champions. It's only the world's blatant, naked refusal to adopt the 100 that stops them being hat-trick champions, I'm sure. No doubt about it. But I guess things feel pretty rosy in the garden compared to where we were, 10 months ago. Things are looking up, and particularly in this white ball world where they've ridden the retirement of Owen Morgan. And if anything, by the end of this tournament, did they even look stronger? They probably did.
I absolutely agree with you. It's an extraordinary thing because I think when we started 99.94, we began in August, September, and the part of English cricket that we'd started to learn to rely on, really, was white ball cricket under Owen Morgan. it felt like a safe place where Test cricket had gone horribly wrong. England had won one Test match out of 17. Let's be quite clear. And yet there was this sort of safe place where you could go to. If you're an England fan, you could go, well, we're terrible at Test cricket, but we're magnificent at the game that's really going to persist as the future goes on. And then the summer came, June, July, August, and it was pretty bleak, really, actually, when Owen Morgan retired. Jos Buttler took over the captaincy. Matthew Mott had come in, and they didn't perform with the same vim, the same vigour, the same certainty. And yet at the end of this, they become world champions. And I suppose what we've got to examine is, did they get a bit lucky? Was it, the nature of tournament cricket? Or were they this standout dominant team? For me, having been here the entire time, there was one very poor performance against Ireland.
A weird one against Afghanistan.
Thinking. Yeah, there was a weird one against Afghanistan, but when they played against sides that they felt were on their level, New Zealand, for example, Sri Lanka when they had to win, India, who are a powerhouse in world cricket, then Pakistan in a final, they were simply supreme. We could talk about the final in and of itself, I think, in the second part of this program, but just generally looking at where England are as a white ball side, how has this happened? 7 years ago, I had a very long fish dinner with Jonathan Agnew and Adam Mountford. Wow. And people, 4 hours. It was lovely, from 2 till 6 this afternoon.
I just thought you ate a really long fish between you.
No. I had 12 oysters. I had a series of different ceviches, sashimis, all and a clam chowder.
Anyway, you thought England were useless, basically.
Well, no. I was talking to people who had been here 7 years ago and had watched the nadir of English cricket, 2015. Adelaide losing to Bangladesh, the hopelessness of their white ball way of playing. And 7 years later, they hold both trophies. 10 months after, as I said earlier, being so dreadful at red ball cricket under Joe Root, they are champions of 2 formats. How have they got there? Why has this happened? Is this just the nature of sport, or is it that... That somehow...
I think... Well, you asked whether the dominant team earlier in the tournament. They weren't the dominant team, but I think they were the best team. And it's not always the case that the best team wins, but I think you'd be hard-pushed to look at any other team out there and say there was a team that was better suited, better constructed, or better skilled for T20 cricket than this England team. Why did that happen? I think it's legacy. I think this is the long reading to good decisions been made. England flipped their whole approach in 15 after that tournament that you're talking about, the Bangladesh defeat. And they objectively, and it did cost them a little bit. We know that, and we know that from our discussions of the Test team and where it went wrong, and the fact that I suppose even Ashley Giles admitted that the eye went off the ball a little bit. But they decided to get better at white ball cricket. They decided to be more aggressive, to be bolder, to be braver, to take more calculated gambles. And that fed down all through the system. So they didn't create from those decisions the likes of Alex Hales and Jason Roy and Johnny Bairstow. They were already there. But the decisions they made, the emphasis they put on it, the seriousness with which they went about this created some of the players that they have now. Liam Livingstone is a direct result of those things. Sam Curran, in all likelihood, probably is. He was huge. And the fact that they have pressure pushing on all places and options and depth across the board is a result of the fact that they knew and they really ripped up the book and decided to be a different team. And that lies at Morgan's door. It's completely correct to give him credit for all of this. Buttler has, at quite short notice, added a bit. He's added a bit of his own, and it's really gone well these last few weeks. And he didn't do it in the summer. It's quite a recent development that. He's almost done it on the fly.
When you say that, what do you think he has added? Because I've heard people say this, and I've seen it, but I've not quite been able to define it. What is it, do you think, that he has done?
Well, I think he has become nimbler with his decision-making, even more so than Morgan, probably. He has embraced the nature of this team, which is lots of players who can do lots of things. And he has, whether it was necessity, because he didn't look like that was going to be his calling card when he first started in the job. He almost looked like he had been handed on some fine china, some family heirloom from Owen Morgan, and he didn't want to touch it too much in case he dropped it. And then I think the way things were going, certainly the defeat to Ireland and Afghanistan, for that matter, the game where they just squeaked through, really, I just think he decided this isn't going to work. I need to get my hands dirty here and put myself in the thick of it. And he did after that. I don't think you could look at a game that England played after the Ireland match and say they went about it the same way or they used the same methods. He didn't have a blueprint, actually. Or if he did have a blueprint, it was sketched in the thinnest pencil going, and he was happy to grab a new one. And that's what, realistically, T20 cricket increasingly should be a game of quick decisions and winning little percentage battles. And that's what England is set up to do. Now, England flipped the script and became this team. I think the thing that's coming down the pipe is that Australia are going to have to flip the script. India are going to have to. Pakistan have got the bowlers but not the batters. I think a lot of people are going to be looking around and trying to step up to the mark. And it's hard to stay on top forever. It really is. You look at all these people who champion their 1% gains and stuff in whatever sport you choose. Dominance is bloody hard to come by. So England are top of the world right now in white ball cricket, but people will be coming for them, no doubt.
Before we move on to the second stage, where we're going to look at the actual match itself, let's just reflect briefly on what England didn't have. They didn't have Mark Wood. They didn't have Jofra Archer. They didn't have Johnny Bairstow. They didn't have Reece Topley. They didn't have Dawid Malan. Ravi Bopara said on air during the
didn't have Ravi Bopara either, you're right. He was an outsider of the squad, but
no, you're right. But Ravi himself said on air, and he's a very astute reader of the game, and he wouldn't say this unless he really meant it. He said England's second 11 would beat India. Now, that is quite the claim to make, but actually, when you've just destroyed a side with 4 overs to spare, it's one that's hard to refute, isn't it? I mean, England are unbelievably blessed with players who know how to play T20 cricket. And I guess that the question I put to you, Rory, is that because of the thing that England cricket fans have been so scared about for years, namely that, their players aren't wedded to English cricket. They're not part of the county scene. They're not part of, they're going off to play in a variety of different leagues. They've played in a variety of different leagues. Phil Salt wanders into a World Cup final. He didn't do badly at all. Sam Curran, out of nowhere, is player of the tournament. Is it out of nowhere, or is it out of actually playing everywhere around the world?
Yeah, Sam Curran has been a headline-grabbing act in the IPL. Now, it's a different world if Sam Curran's rocking up into the England team, fresh from sort of roaming around fairly low-key matches. Yeah, England are the chief beneficiaries of the global franchise situation at the moment, because there's players we haven't even touched upon who are top draft, number 1 picks at things all around the world. People like Timar Mills, who's there as a reserve, really. He's just sort of carrying the drinks. You flick on any competition and he'll turn up as one of the big picks.
Well, and I guess that is the fear for the rest of the world. I don't know whether it's a problem for England. They find themselves in a particularly comfortable place right now. We're going to take a short break. After that, we're going to talk about the actual game itself, how England won that game, how Pakistan lost that game.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
Welcome back, team. So, England are world champions. They're world champions how? They played at the MCG on a pitch that was, without doubt, incredibly sporty. I mean, I don't know if it was obvious to people watching at home, but if you were there, it was a really tricky pitch. I mean, you looked at Adil Rashid. He bowled a wicket maiden in the, was it 7th or 8th or 9th over of the innings? Poor old Iftikhar was all over the place.
Was it, I think?
Was it even as late as that?
Yeah.
He was,
My pal, yeah.
54-year-old Iftikhar Ahmed was groping into thin air as balls spun after spun. 4 balls beat his bat. I think when the Pakistanis bowled, it was very clear that there was, if you found the right length, there was a lot in that pitch. It was tough. 137 was actually not the worst total that you could post. Pakistan would be annoyed. They'll think, we should have got to 150, 155. But I thought England actually bowled quite poorly to start with. They came back into it. But Sam Curran was a standout. I mean, 3 for 13? What on earth is going on here? I thought Anrich Nortje's 2 for 10 against the Netherlands was probably going to be the greatest bowling figures of the lot. I know Sam Curran had taken 5 for 10 earlier on, but there were some bowlers, there were a couple of bowlers
Different
who
world
worked
to do it
out
in the
what was
final.
going on. Well, they worked out what was going on that pitch, and it was a pitch that you're not expecting for a World Cup final. And it took an intelligence to get that right. And I think for me, what really won the game was that Pakistan's fast bowlers bowled too quick, too full at the beginning of England's innings. And Sam Curran absolutely nailed the conditions. He was the difference between the two sides. Adil Rashid as well. Between those two bowlers, basically won England the game.
Absolutely agree with that. I think also I'll be really strong in saying I think the toss was huge for England. I think now they thought the toss was going to be big in case rain came and in case they were dealing with a revised target and a Duckworth-Lewis-Stern arrangement. But actually I think the toss was huge because if Pakistan with their weaknesses and respective strengths were going to get England in big trouble, it was going to be through quick wickets, and it did get quick wickets at the top in the second innings, but just with not enough behind them, not enough to really make it sting. Now, I think if Pakistan bowl first and Shaheen Shah Afridi takes out Hales, who's had just coming off the back of 2 fantastic matches, if takes him out early, gets stuck into England, Salt struggles, then I think if England honestly, I tell you what, I think if England make 137 batting first, I think Pakistan win.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that. Although I do think England were the strongest team, and I do think they had the most solutions. I think if they had struggled through and made even 140 score, I think Babar and Rizwan and the other ones have a real racing chance of bringing home the trophy. So listen, I think this toss was huge because it gave England the chance to get into Pakistan, and they did. Babar and Rizwan didn't really get on the board. Actually, and they ended up staying around a little bit too long and just anchoring things and dragging it down. It was a sticky pitch. It wasn't easy. Good bowlers flourished, put it that way. And Nazim certainly did. But Pakistan needed the game to go a certain way. And listen, both teams knew that because they've played each other tons recently. And I think probably as soon as they won the toss and got a good start, England were ahead. And personally, it got a bit scratchy, didn't it? There was never a point in the chase where I thought England weren't going to win it.
Really?
And it wasn't just the Stokes fact. Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't. There was a point, I think, when Shaheen Shah started his last over as was and bowled that ball, when I thought that it could have got a little bit awkward for England. It got to about 9 and over. It got to about 1.5 a ball. And Shaheen Shah bowled that first ball of that over, and it was a slower ball, and Moeen was groping in thin air. And I cannot stress enough how awkward that pitch was. It was grabby. It was awkward. It was terrific for both seam and good spinners, and that was the key. Adil Rashid, Shadab Khan, they were both very difficult to get away. There was a bit of grab in the pitch. And I thought that if Shaheen Shah had 11 more balls to bowl, that it could have got right down to the wire. Yes, I think England played a better game. I think they were always on top throughout. But, when T20 is an awkward game to analyse, isn't it? In the sense that when it comes down to it, you've got very small margins that determine the difference between the two sides. And this was a pitch that was actually designed for Pakistan. It was circumstances that were designed for Pakistan to win. And the fact that England won, and they won it comfortably, I felt it came down to a bit of good fortune. And you're right, it came down to the toss. Because Pakistan had to assess the conditions, and no one knew what that pitch was going to do first up. But England didn't bowl that well in the power play. They really didn't. I mean, they didn't challenge Babar Azam.
But they got away with the power play. Pakistan let them away with it. They let them away with it. They got 30, got 1 run more than India got.
Yeah, and
England absolutely blew India out the park, and Pakistan got 1 run more in the power play. I thought they let the chance go. They could have got more.
And I guess, look, Matt Henry said on BBC, he said, India played blockbuster cricket in a streaming age, and in a way, Pakistan are set up to do that, aren't they? Rizwan and Babar do that, and they try to keep their wickets intact and see where they're going to go. But they've got such a stellar bowling attack. I mean, when you look at Nazim Shah bowled a couple of overs that were absolutely extraordinary. I mean, it's like watching Test cricket. He beat the bat time and time again. And we can talk forever about how Ben Stokes has played the 3 defining innings, hasn't he? Headingley.
We haven't really done the Stokes thing yet.
No. Well, partly because it was such an ugly and profoundly foul innings, in much the same way as it was when England won the 2019 World Cup. I mean, it was horrible to watch. He was all over the place. He was beaten time and time again by superb bowling on an awkward pitch.
In the battle, wasn't he? Just in the battle. He got his scrappers for head on.
He didn't get the edge. I mean, there was a referral, wasn't there, when they were convinced that the ball must have hit his bat because it had beaten it 4 or 5 times. I mean, Mohammad Rizwan behind the stumps is convinced that every single time the ball goes through to his gloves, it's out. Moderately irritating, certainly if you're a commentator, but fair play to him. But it was a genuinely tight contest. I thought. There was almost nothing between the two teams. So we can delight and be excited by England winning the T20 World Cup. But my God, a little bit more luck for Pakistan and they win that game, don't they? Just a little bit more luck.
Yeah. I do feel we should just give a bit of props. We are England on 99.94. Bit of props for Stokes. Not that he's short of them. But, I mean, this was the most heartening innings that he's played since he came back to playing cricket for England, I think, in a sense that made you think that he's really up for working for it, because there was a bit of a feeling in the summer that he's so absorbed was he in the idea of aggressive cricket and front foot and take the battle to them and all that, take the aggressive option. there was a worry that we'd lost the smart, equation-defying Ben Stokes who sees the end line and just finds a way to get there. And that he was going to be a different player. He's going to be an impact, sort of adrenaline shot cricketer, batter going forward. This was the moment where he's still got that. When he's in the thick of it and there's stuff flying around, he wants to get through, and it just made me think. It just made me think he'll play longer, he'll play better, he'll score more hundreds than I thought he did, than I thought he would, like 6 weeks ago. It made me think that Stokes. There was a glimmer in the eye. Loved it. Cumbrian fella, actually, as well.
Yeah,
which is good.
You love that, don't you?
I got a message from.
And he mentioned that.
I do, yeah.
He mentioned that, didn't he? When Livingston came out, and
he
said,
did.
Two Cumbrians at the end. Yeah,
exactly. England ruining their decision not to pick Jordan Clark and give the coach's job to Paul Nixon. I understand.
What I would say is that is Ben Stokes' first 50 in T20 international cricket. He did it in a World Cup final. Unbelievable. What is he, 32 years old? That's the first time he's hit 50 in a T20 international. It's so ludicrous. It's so bizarre. But it's classically Ben Stokes. We're going to take a break.
Building the material for the next film.
Well, it really is. We'll take a break. When we come back, won't take too long over it, but where do England go from here? They're top of the world. The top of the world, Ma. What are they going to do?
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Welcome back. So, first side in the history of cricket to win the 50 over World Cup, the T20 World Cup. 10 months ago, they were dead and buried. They won 6 test matches out of 7. There's a strong argument to say that they are right now the most dominant, the most capable team in world cricket across formats. I don't quite know how that's happened, but it has. And
listen to the first part of the podcast. We just explained it.
Where they? But what? People have got to come back into this team, Rory. I mean, Johnny Bairstow's got to come back into this team.
This is it, yeah.
Jofra Archer's got to come back into this team. You would imagine Reece Topley is going to come back into this team. Mark Wood is going to come back into this team. Yeah, are they absolutely matchless right now, or what? I mean, I don't know. I don't know where. I'm struggling. I'm struggling, Rory. I'm struggling with euphoria. Right? I mean, I don't know.
I get it. It's not a natural feeling.
It's easy. It's not normal to find yourself in Australia at the Melbourne Cricket Ground in front of 80,000 people and find England winning a game of cricket. Face. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And you know that because you've been around the world. You've done all these things. You've experienced the dismality.
Last time I was there, Scott Boland was putting together his claim for greatest living cricketer. So
right. I mean, I am a blessed.
I picked the wrong horse there, didn't I?
I'm a blessed human being. I am in Australia in a state of unusual euphoria, not because I'm a fan of England, but because how the hell has this happened? How have they got there? What are they going to do next? Can they get better? Can they honestly get better?
Well, they can. That's an interesting question. This is a peak. Now, whether they can get better than this peak, I don't know. But are there options that they can draft in that will make them better than they would be if they didn't draft them in? Sure, there are. So Archer into this team makes opposition really, really wonder what they're going to do. Archer changes things enormously because he's such an adept bowler in this kind of cricket. We don't know, by the way, what Jofra Archer is going to come back. We know he is going to come back because he's nearly there. But it's been a long time. Fast bowling is a sort of difficult science, stroke art. It's one of the two, anyway, somewhere in between. And it's not, we don't know if he's going to blow Australia away in the Ashes next summer or never play red ball again or become the best T20 cricketer who's ever lived. Who the hell knows what's going to happen with Jofra Archer? But even money, he improves the team. Jason Roy isn't done. If he hits form and gets back, it's going to be hard to keep Jason Roy out because he gives England exactly what they want in this form of cricket. I think you look at one of the questions you look at, could England get better and better and better? Well, they can only stay at this peak as long as Adil Rashid's around because there isn't an obvious sub for Adil Rashid. Rian Ahmed is the next man in line. We talked about him a wee bit, I think, on here. I interviewed him recently. Unbelievably confident kid. Genuinely is ready to... He said to me, if England wanted to open the bowling in the test matches in Pakistan, he'll just do it because that's what he does. He just bowls. He bowls whenever people want him to. So he's super confident, but England don't have a Rashid replacement ready to roll just yet. So he's the big one. He's got to stay fit. I mean, interesting here, we've got Will Smeed. This is an interesting one, isn't it? Just announced that he's going to play white ball only. He's never played first-class cricket. Probably never will now. He's played one 50-over game in his life. He's decided that T20 at the age of 21, he's decided that this is for him. Now, maybe we'll see a bit more of that in England. Maybe their success at this format, the opportunities that pervade, maybe 21-year-old kid comes through and says, why would I want to bother my arse breaking down and playing Test cricket? Maybe we're going to have a glut of players who just want to come in and refresh this team. But there's a lot of questions. Who drops out? The next World Cup is India, which changes the equation for England and probably changes it against England's interests. And then it's USA and West Indies for the T20. By then, don't think we'll see Wokes. Don't think we'll see Jordan. Milan, probably not. Probably not Hales. I don't feel like this is going to be a 5-year chapter in Hales' career. So there is a little bit of refreshing to do.
You mentioned Smeed. You mentioned England cricketers deciding to play only white ball cricket, only 2020 cricket. This is a choice that England cricketers can play. It's a choice that Indian cricketers cannot play. They are stuck in India playing IPL, Ranji Trophy, Test cricket. South African players can play everywhere. Are we in a place now where weirdly, the countries like England have got a real chance of getting won over because they're, in inverted commas, mercenary cricketers are able to go and play everywhere around the world. Will Smeed, in 2 years' time, could have played on basically every pitch that you can ever play on. He could have developed his game around the world. BBL, PSL, IPL, CPL, who knows? Is that actually going to work for England, do you think, in their favour, strangely?
I don't... Honestly, I don't feel like too many people will make that decision. That's why I think Smeed is interesting, because the number of times you speak to a young player who's really talented and they tell you that they grew up on drinking in Test cricket and it's all they can think of. Rian Ahmed certainly said that to me. He said he's only interested in cricket when it's hard, and Test cricket's the hardest form that he can think of. So I don't think it'll necessarily be a problem, but I think it plays well for England that they have these options. Just as we're on this section of looking forward and the next World Cup, because if they could win another 50-over World Cup and retain that title in India, that really would cement this lot as the golden boys, really, golden generation. And maybe we have to end on this, but India World Cup next year, does Ben Stokes play in it? Does he reverse the retirement and come out for one last job?
My guess is yes. Actually, my guess is absolutely yes. Look, we'll see. At the moment, we're riding on the crest of an extraordinary wave. I can't quite believe that English cricket has got here. As I said right at the beginning of this, 10 months ago, it was in the absolute doldrums. And now, I mean, I am not getting any Twitter mentions from Indians telling me that I need to cry. And there's a strange thing about Indian Twitter that they do think that crying is an important thing, and I'm not crying, except tears of extraordinary emotional joy. Thank you for listening to England Cricket on 99.94, where you can speak cricket every day. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast. You can download the 99.94 app and follow us on Twitter at Norcross Cricket, in my case, at Norcross, as in neither angry nor cross, and I am certainly not angry or cross, at Norcross Cricket. And in your case, Rory, at...
I'm at the RVD. You can find me there.
He's always at the RVD.
Leisure.
He's always at the RVD.
Yep.
It's the way to go. Never miss out. Join our 24/7 conversation on social media and follow us at 99.94 DM. Cricket every day. Thank you for joining us. England have won another World Cup. It's kind of weird. I don't quite know how I feel about it, but what I would say is that I've never been in front of 80,000 people in a sporting arena and commentated in my life. The only time I've had more than 80,000 people was when Wimbledon beat Liverpool 1-0 in the FA Cup final in 1988. And it was brilliant, but somehow not the same.
Different.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, it was, massively different. For me, good night.
More on that another time.